Hey, good morning. Good morning. Glad to be here for another stronger and better session. It's 11 o'clock on Thursday. We got another great show for you today. Gonna have my friend Tony on here to talk about finances, and we got some great stuff that's gonna come up. So as you come in, please give me a shout out. Show me that you're here. Let me know that you're here, and say hello. I see people starting to join in now, and good morning, Brandon. How you doing, man? Hopefully you're doing well on today. I haven't seen you in a minute, so we got to reconnect, man. Tell your parents hello. Y'all come on in, say good morning to me. Let me know that you are here and that you are watching the show. Please do a watch party. Please share this with as many people as you can. Like I said, we're going to be talking about money talk, another show on money. And we're going to be talking about estate planning, making sure that we're set up for our futures. And if you have any questions, if you want to interact with us, if you want to come on the show just to give your point of view, come on. You'll see a link at the bottom of your screen pretty soon. And matter of fact, I'm going to post it right now so you can come on live with us and ask your questions. But we want you to join. Come on, say good morning. I see people are starting to come in. Good morning, Mary. Money Talk. Good morning. Good to see you today. Hopefully everything's well. Make sure that you are sharing this, like I said, and asking your questions and coming on in. It's Thursday. This is when we interact with each other. We have fun and have candid conversations about becoming stronger and better with our finances, with our relationships, with our spirituality, with growing our relationship with Christ and all that good stuff. Please make sure also that you are following us on Facebook, on subscribe to our YouTube channel, on Instagram. We also want you to make sure that you are participating in all our shows. So make sure that you send questions, comments, or anything that you want to hear on later shows. Please let me know. Let me know, and we can incorporate it. So say good morning. Good morning, Vanessa. Good to see you. I see people are really starting to come in now. So come on, y'all. Come on in. Y'all come on in. Share it. Let them know. Let other people know that we are live. We are live. Like I said, we have my friend Tony who's going to be on this morning. Good morning, Age. What's up, bro? Happy anniversary, man. You and Heather had an anniversary, man. Congratulations. Love you, man. Love you, love you, love you. So we got people still coming in. We want to give them just a few more seconds to come on in as we are going to begin to talk about finances. And like I said, we're going to be talking about estate planning and really talking about getting our lives together in terms of finances and becoming stronger and better. Good morning, Miss Robin. Good morning. Glad to have you here with us. But I'm gonna go ahead and get started, and I'm gonna welcome Tony into the show. Good morning, Tony.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I am well. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, glad to have you back on the show. We always have a good time talking about money and talking about finances, and people are still coming in. They're saying good morning to us. So,
Good morning.
good morning, Robin. Glad to have you here with us and this morning. And like I said, everyone, please, if you have any questions, please share it in the comment section, or you can ask your private questions by texting me at 860-946-0523, and I'll put it in the post. But we want to go ahead and kind of get started. They're saying good morning to you, Tony. Miss Mary.
Good morning, everyone. Hi.
You remember my brother Adrian. Adrian said good morning also.
Hi, Adrian.
So yes. So let's go ahead and get started in terms of what's going on in the world today. And we are about to embark in another election. And people are really concerned what's going to happen with the market, what's going to happen with our money, our savings, and how that's going to be impacted. Even now, we were talking about how the real estate market has just started booming because of what's going on with the interest rates and how things are really low right now, and people are just buying up houses like left and right. So I wanted to start our conversation off by just talking about just our current situation. How should we be thinking about our money, and how should we be thinking about our finances as this election comes, and as we may have a new president or continue to have the president that we have? So just want to get your view on that.
Yeah, so that's a lot. A lot of things are going on right now with, presidential elections, with unemployment rates being at, their highest. So it is a time where a lot of investors are pretty concerned about, what the future actually holds. But actually, statistically speaking, historically, an election year doesn't have a long-term impact on your investment strategy. So what we have seen historically is that after any election, we tend to see a bit of volatility because people get into their emotions. So if
Yeah.
your candidate did not win per se, you may feel like, oh my God, the world is coming to an end. I'm pulling all of my money. So you will see the shifts in the markets. But after about an average of about 4 months, we tend to see the market kind of become a bit more steady. Because the thing to remember is that regardless of who wins, companies are still viable.
Yeah.
The key thing that I tell most investors and my family is to be diversified. That's the most important thing. And if you have a diversified strategy, and what I mean by that is when you think about your investments in your retirement accounts, do you have the right amount of bonds and stocks in your portfolio?
Can we stop right there, Toni?
Yes.
Because I want people to really understand what being diversified means. Some people don't really understand that. So can you kind of just explain that a little bit?
I can. So diversification is, do I have the right stuff in my mix? Okay. And what I mean by stuff, I'm just going to break it down very, very plainly, is stocks.
Yep.
What kind of stocks? Do I have the right type of mutual funds? And mutual funds, as we said before, were, a fund that is made up of like 100 to 200 different stocks.
Yep.
Do I have enough, like I said, bonds? And bonds, of course, is when we actually allow municipalities and corporations to borrow from us and we get interest in return. So diversification is having the right amount of stocks, the right amount of bond exposure in your portfolio based on whatever your risk tolerance is. So example, if you have a very low risk tolerance, you will probably have more bond exposure in your portfolio because bonds are those investments that they're not going to pay you a whole lot, but they're very steady. And this year, of course, bonds are very high because bonds work in opposition to stocks. Okay, so when your stocks are down, bonds tend to go up.
Yeah.
That's the key for diversification.
Can I ask you a question though about that? Because how do we evaluate our risk tolerance?
Oh, that's a great question. So typically when I have a client that comes in, we have a questionnaire with about 6 questions it's going to ask you different types of questions to assess how you might feel when the market is down 30%. What would your reaction be?
Yeah.
When you say, Toni, I fire you because I lost 30%. If you say, you know what, I look at this as an opportunity because I remember, Toni, you said when everything is down and when most people are fearful, that's when you want to invest. So if the market is down 30%, I want to pour more into the market. So a risk tolerance questionnaire is going to help people like myself gauge kind of like your emotional state when it comes to market volatility. And once we determine that, we can better fit your portfolio, how it's to be diversified, whether you need 60% bond exposure, 40% stocks, or vice versa. So the higher your risk tolerance, the more equity or stock exposure that you would have. Gotcha. The more bond exposure that you would have. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. So is a bond, I just want to be clear, is a bond more secure than a stock? Is that what you think? kind of
So
information?
I don't like the word secure.
All
Okay.
right.
So I will say because nothing is guaranteed when you invest.
Paper.
Okay. So I would say that, okay, we have this thing called the investment pyramid. Okay. So if you can visualize a pyramid, and at the bottom is your foundation. Okay. The bottom would be your cash because we need an emergency fund. But we know money does not really earn anything. So that's a very low risk investment. The only risk to cash is that you lose buying power as inflation increases. So, if you have everything in cash, you're not going to lose it. You're going to earn a little interest. So it's no real risk to money except buying power. The next layer of the investment pyramid is where your bonds come into place. Okay. So if you're at the bottom, that means you have low risk and low reward.
Yeah.
Okay. So bonds are going to give you kind of low reward, but low risk.
Right.
As you gradually make your way up the investment pyramid, that's where you get into, growth and income stocks like your Procter and Gamble's that pay dividends.
Yeah.
Your Chevrons, they pay dividends. So that's in the middle. So that's saying, Toni, I'm not low, but I'm kind of in the middle. And that's where my risk tolerance is. As you go further up, you get into the growth companies like your Amazons, because those carry higher risk. And what that means is when they're good, they're great. But when they are low, they are low. So can you really stomach when Amazon drops from 3,100 to 1,600?
Yeah.
Can you stomach that? Yeah. And if you can, great. But if not, we're going to scale back and we're going to go more downward, okay, to more of your growth and income stocks and your bond funds. Does that make sense? So the higher you're up on the pyramid, the more risk, but the more reward. The lower you are, lower risk, low return.
Makes sense. So we always talk about save. And even in our past conversations, we talked about even, I believe, putting a reserve of 6 months, 8 months, or a year in terms of your expenses and all that kind of good stuff. So should people be saving at a banking institution, or should we save in a bond or in a mutual fund stock?
That's a really great question. So, for me personally, I think everyone should have, your goals should be 6 to 12 months of whatever your expenses are. So if your budget is, $4,000 a month, it will be great to have $48,000 saved just in case something happens. I mean, we're in the midst of a pandemic and tons of people have already lost their livelihood. So, when you have that cushion, it's like, okay, I lost my job, but I saved, so I'm good. So it's not that much stress on you. But I would say for myself, sometimes too much cash is just not good, right?
Right.
So what people don't realize that in your emergency fund, it doesn't have to really be all cash. So for me, I like to look at a 70% equity or stocks and 30% cash because I don't want the low interest rate year after year. So what I do, I decide, okay, I'm going to buy a stock. I'm going to buy a few stocks. And then as I take out my cash, I begin to liquidate stock positions at the right time. So your emergency fund doesn't have to really be all cash. It could be made up of cash and investments in a brokerage account, which will be at a firm, not necessarily the bank.
Gotcha.
But I think everyone should have a good bank where you can easily access your funds and then also build those relationships with your banks, because the banks, when they know you, it's easier to get like mortgages with them, equity lines of credit should you need it. So I think building a relationship with a local bank is also important.
Yeah. I think, Toni, too, and you can kind of talk on this, but you got to know yourself too. You got to know if you can't handle having money in the bank and you can get at it, you're more likely to spend it.
Oh, that is so true. So some of my clients, they know that they can't handle it. So I just had a client and we liquidated a lot of her UPS shares. And it was a lot of money.
Right.
And she's like, can you please get this? Because I will spend it. I'm like, it's done, because that is a true point. When you see it, even, think about it. When you have more, you tend to spend more.
Oh, absolutely.
And so if I can
Absolutely.
just take that out so that I don't see it, I'm good. So I do have a lot of clients that prefer, okay, Toni, I just want to see this amount in my bank. So can you take that so I don't see it? And the thing is, they hate to call me because they know they're going to get a sermon
Right.
about, so why do you need this? Oh, that wasn't a part of our strategy. Is that something new? So it has a level of accountability as well. And I think that's a really good point. So if you know yourself and if you are honest with where you are, kind of like credit cards,
Yeah.
some people don't need credit cards because they cannot really manage to a point where the credit cards are working for you and not against you. So you really do have to be honest with yourself.
Yeah, you do. You do. Because I know me, I got some habits, and you have helped me with my habits.
Everyone has habits, but you
Right.
can change, right?
Right. But
You can change. Some
worked.
things you don't want to hear, but
Yeah.
I think that what Toni is right. And once it settles into your spirit, you know what decision you really need to make.
And that's true. And what I was gonna say is what I like is that there's accountability. And
Yeah.
sometimes we need or where I tell people all the time, they do need a financial advisor, because sometimes you need somebody to be accountable to, in terms of saying, look, you gotta have your money this way, you gotta have your money this way,
Yeah.
do this and this. Now, like you said, I don't want to hear the sermon. I don't want to be told off. So I mean, it helps, and people have to realize that it's okay to have somebody advise them. It's your money, but have somebody advise them in the proper use of the money so that they can grow in the future.
Yeah, and I think that's key. And as I think about like our demographic, I honestly feel like we have not really been taught to really go to experts when it comes
Right.
to like your money. We will go to insurance companies all day because in our demographic, that's the only type of that's remotely close to savings that we've seen. Insurance, you need insurance, even though we didn't know what type of insurance we need.
Yeah.
It's embedded in our demographic that, we just do insurance, and we are afraid to like have those conversations when it comes to money because we never really talked about that as a whole demographic around the table. And so, we have 400 years of oppression and catch up to do.
Yes,
And
yes.
I think it starts by, having conversations. We can change a generation. We can have conversations now with our kids, with their friends, so that we are more open to talk about money. It's not forbidden anymore. We discuss that. I think that's important.
Yeah, and I think I brought up before. I was talking to someone of another demographic, and they were telling me, you need to put insurance on your parents. I was like, oh my God, I never.
Yeah.
You don't ever think about stuff like that, but that's how they build generational wealth.
Yes.
And it's thinking outside the box like that. It doesn't mean that you want something to happen to them.
Right.
But it's really thinking outside the box. So I
Mm-hmm.
think we do need to have those conversations and really start talking to our children and talking to advisors to see what's the options out there.
Yeah. Yeah, because people don't know what's out there. And so
Yeah.
they go to things that are very common, like annuities, insurance
Yeah.
products that we do not understand. But, we do it because of the things that we hear in conversations like, oh, it's guaranteed. Oh,
Yeah.
you'll never lose. And those are things that are very fraudulent, honestly, when it comes to selling those kind of products when a person does not understand exactly what they're getting themselves into. So you find that a lot of things are one-sided, especially in our demographic, honestly. And so we got to just be more in tune, more knowledgeable, so that we can make better decisions when it comes to building wealth.
Yeah. I don't know if we can get into it, and you tell me if I'm going too far, but
You always go too far.
but in terms of us like having insurances on your children.
Mm-hmm.
is that a good practice, or I know that some people were saying it is, some don't believe in it, but is that?
So I will say that, I mean, I think insurance it is a really good strategy. I think everyone should protect their family. Okay. And I also feel like we should all leave legacies. I mean, it's a biblical principle that we leave to not our grandkids, but our great grandkids. And so to have enough to pass along for generations to come is important. Now, as it relates to having insurance on your children,
Mhm.
I think a good way to do that is through group insurance. If you work with a company and you can add that on as opposed to buying a separate policy, that's a good way to kind of save money, but also have a death benefit should something happen to your child. Now, I had a case where, you know, this guy said, my son is bad. He's in the streets.
He in the streets doing
He's gonna die in the streets.
Yeah.
And I told him, I said, okay, you need to get some money. You need to get an insurance policy on him. And I said, why don't you get like $1 million term on him?
Yeah.
Should something happen? I mean, you don't want your kid to die, but man, if he's not listening to you and he's not, living the lifestyle that will produce longevity, and he's in a gang, I mean, it's a probability that he's not going to make it. So we did just that. Lo and behold, it happened.
Wow.
And so, we're transitioning $1 million because he had kids.
Yeah.
And so now his kids are not left, to fend for themselves. We have a good strategy for them.
Yeah.
So I think when you have the ability to do that with a company, it's always good. For me personally, I do not have insurance on my kids through a separate policy. I do it through my group policy because it's just inexpensive. Because I feel like at some point your kids have to be responsible.
Yeah.
I make sure that if something were to happen to me, they're completely good. But I feel like we have to give that responsibility to them when they are, 21 and they're working in society, or 25, whatever that may be. I don't really at that point want to pay for them an insurance policy. I feel like you're grown.
Yeah.
Pay for your own policy.
Yeah.
And that's important.
That makes sense. And you mentioned something that was key also, the difference between, I don't know if you can explain term versus permanent insurances, because that made sense what you said about the young man, and like $1 million policy or even lower than that is not that expensive.
No.
The term, it really is.
Right. So term is amazing. So I have both term and permanent. So term is something that if you have children, you should have a term policy at minimum, because we don't know what will happen to us. And to leave your children in despair because you didn't spend $500 a year to make sure that they were protected, that is bad. I'm just completely honest. So it is important that term goes from like anywhere from 10 to 30 years. So what that means is after that period of time, you won't have anything.
Yeah.
A lot of times people are like, well, I'm just giving away money. Well, no, you're not. It's kind of like your car insurance, your mortgage insurance. Yeah. It's required. And that's how I look at term. I have kids, they're in school, they need to go to college. Something were to happen to me, can I fund that? That's important. Yeah. And so we got to have enough insurance to fund our family. If one spouse dies, will the other spouse be able to live the next 6 years and be okay? Will the house be paid for? So why would you leave that burden on your spouse when you can easily have a term policy? Yeah. And then you want to make sure, I use permanent a lot of times for long-term care, as well as estate strategy. And so I know what I want to leave my estate, and I include not only my girls in that permanent policy, but I also include my church. I include my sorority, Alpha Kappa Alpha, Skiwee. I also include organizations that I support, So I believe in permanent to leave legacy. That's important to me.
Yeah.
My kids' school. I'm leaving them money. So I just want to be a blessing, even, while I'm in heaven, people are
Right.
still remembering the legacy that I left them.
Yeah. Now let's transition into estate planning.
Okay.
Since you brought up estate planning, what's the best way for us to really do estate planning?
So estate planning is so important. I cannot say that enough. And so many times people, they die and then it's just so much money to get their estate done, which that's money that we could have saved because we really did need an attorney to pass the estate. So it's a lot. It really is based on an individual and what they have.
Okay.
So I will just kind of start with, do you have that spreadsheet?
Yeah, I can bring it up. Yep.
I will start with the different types of things that we want to make sure in estate planning that we're prepared for. So the first thing is registration and beneficiary designations. Okay.
Okay.
So what that means is when you have a 401k plan or an IRA or an insurance policy, do you have the right beneficiaries on there, or do you have any beneficiaries at all? So a lot of times when I review someone's retirement strategy and I'm like, okay, can you send me your 401k statement? I notice that you don't have a beneficiary. When you die, this will end up in court. Again, when you have a beneficiary, nothing goes to court. It's just transferred to whoever your beneficiaries are. Registration, making sure that everything you have is registered properly is really important. Making sure if you have joint accounts, say for example, if you have a joint account and one person dies or you get a divorce, you need to update that registration to make sure that that is still good. So reviewing your registrations and beneficiary designations, at least once a year is really important.
Yep.
Transfer on death is the same as kind of designating a beneficiary to whatever, brokerage account, IRA account that you have. Again, it's just going to transfer to whoever you designate. And again, you do not have to go to court.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions about those two?
No, I think we got that.
Okay. So let's talk about a will.
Okay.
So a will is a legal document that governs the distribution of assets in your name and determines who gets what when you die. Okay. So can I just pause here?
Yeah, because I was going to ask you, can you pause a little bit on wills, because a lot of us don't have wills.
Yeah, and we get upset and people start fighting. And, I thought we were cool, but now, we're enemies because, she said I could have this and no, I want that. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's sad, honestly.
It is sad, but I see it all the time of, families breaking up because there was no will or nobody can find the will.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can just talk about that a little bit, the importance of this.
Yes, the wills are important because they will eliminate everybody fighting at the wake and at the funeral. So we need to. So let me just say this: when you have, because some people, if you only have like an IRA and a 401k, you don't need a will, for that. So anything that has a beneficiary designation will not be a part of your will. So for example, all of my brokerage accounts, all of that stuff, I have a beneficiary designation. I don't need a will for that. Now I do need a will for my home, because I can't attach a beneficiary to my house, to my vehicles, to anything like that. You cannot designate. So the best way to think about it is any asset that I have that I cannot sign a document and say, give this to them at my death, a beneficiary designation, you need a will for that.
Right.
Okay. So will is important. And, Leroy said something that was really cool, like where's your will? So I'm in my home office and this, can you see this?
I can see it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is a fireproof. Okay, I'm an AKA. So yeah,
Yeah, we see the pink and green.
Target. This is where my stuff is. Okay, this is my will, my trust, my everything, and it is fireproof. So if something were to burn, it is here. And I also have a safe upstairs that I also keep this information. So I also have a copy in my office. So I have 3 places, and my trustees know who they are. So this is important. I told my kids, should something happen to me, this is where you find everything. Okay. Makes sense. It's important to have your will very secure and someone knows where the will is. Now, when you have a will, you have to have an executor of the will.
Okay.
So what is an executor? So that's the person that's going to establish the validity of the will. That is the person that is going to go around collecting all the assets. They know where your stuff is.
Yeah.
They're going to file your final return. Okay. We do have to still file, even though we're not here. Someone has to file our final tax return. They also have to pay final expenses and distribute those assets to either your beneficiaries or your trustee. Okay.
Yep.
So that's the executor. And then so people say, well, if I have a will, do I have to go to court? Yes, you still do. You still have to go to court because it has to go through probate.
Okay.
And what that means is a judge is going to determine if the will is valid. You know, you can't just go find some paper when someone dies and forge their signature or say this is what they wanted me to have. You can't do that. They're going to see if it's valid and if it's been properly executed by the executor. And then they're going to also look at, is this will, has it been revoked? Because you can have a will and have it revoked. Okay, and have another will. So it's important that if you have a new will, so like, for example, if you're divorced and now you're married and so you all have another will, it's important to make sure that, you know, your executors know that this is the most current will. And so that's what the judge is going to determine is if that will is valid. And if it is, and there's no priors, then he will give power to the executor of your estate to move forward with, you know, paying your bills, doing your tax returns and things like that. So that is what a will is. Now, I will say a will is very public.
Okay.
It's very public. So everyone knows about your estate at that point.
Yeah.
So when people know that, you'll start getting these calls saying, hi, I can help you with your money.
Right.
You know, do you need any help? Because it's a very public affair. And you know, I try to avoid that with my estate as much as possible. I don't want people to know what my estate really is. So so what you can do with that is if you don't want everything to be public, you can create a trust. Okay?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. I want people to really understand this trust thing.
Yeah. So let's define what a trust is. Okay. So a trust is basically an revocable living trust. It's a legal arrangement in which you give control of property to a person or institution, which is called being your trustee for the benefit of your beneficiaries. Now, this is created while you are alive. It can be changed or revoked at any time. However, at the time of death, it is irrevocable. So, for example, if you were thinking about, oh, I need to change my trust because I got remarried, and you didn't, oh, well, because it's irrevocable once you die. Or if you have, you know, well, I need to change this because this institution or organization went out of business, or they're no longer doing what I need them to do. I need to remove them from my trust. That's why it's important to look at, I say trust and wills every 5 years to make sure that it's current. And anytime you have a life status change, it's also good to look at those. So a trust, now people will create a trust and forget to put stuff in the trust. So I have a trust. Okay. So what's in your trust? I don't know. Okay. It's not cool to have a trust with nothing in the trust. So what can you put in a trust? And think of it's a legal kind of shield. Okay. It's a legal shield. And you can put everything in your trust. You can put your home in your trust. So remember, if I were to will my house to someone, it's public knowledge. But if I can say, I want to put my home in the name of my trust,
Yeah.
it becomes part of a trust that's different than a will.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It makes sense. It makes total sense.
And also you can use, so like, for example, your beneficiaries can be your trust. What that means is,
Can they own the trust, or what you mean be the trust?
So remember how in the beginning I said you need to make sure your beneficiaries are correct every year. So a beneficiary can be a person or a trust. So for example, my retirement accounts, the beneficiary are not my daughters.
Yes.
It's the trust.
The trust, yeah.
Because the daughters, okay, they're under 18, something happened to me.
Right.
All that money will be spent by my ex-husband, and that is not going to happen. So I had to create, a trust to protect that. And that's a real problem. And I've seen it where it blended families, divorces and things like that. One person dies and the children never get the money.
Yeah.
And so that's really, really important. So you have to, put all of that in the trust, and the trust dictates how that is spent. Gotcha. Now, an important thing about a trust is you have to have a trustee. Now, in a revocable living trust, you own the trust. You can make changes. However, you have to assign trustees who will execute on your behalf. Now, that could be a family member. That could be an institution. Do not pick a trustee that is not good with money. So if you have a brother or sister that they're going to be like, oh, baby,
right.
Get it out of your trust. You want a car at 21, I can get it out of your trust. Because your mama left this money for you, and let's do it. Well, that's not what I want, okay? Yeah. So a lot of times this causes family disunity. So you can also have an institution to be your trustee. Okay, so I've opted to allow my firm to be my trustee. And what will happen as my trustee, I'm sorry, let me go backward. I allowed my sister in my firm to be my trustee. One of my sisters is really good. She's a client. She saves. Her husband's a CPA. Yeah. They get it. But I also have my institution as the trustee. Okay, yeah. To manage the funds, to have a level of accountability should they go rogue. And you can also, in a trust, especially with young kids, you can designate when that money is coming out. You don't have to give up everything when they're 20. Okay. Yeah. So my trust will not, if something were to happen to me, and I'm living in 103, but we got to prepare for this. Yeah. But if something were to happen to me, distributions are like 4 times. Yeah. So 20, college,
gotcha.
25,
yeah.
30, 35. And I think at 40 is when they distribute all assets. Because at that point, I think you kind of know what you need to be. And also a trust protects from any type of divorce. So for example, in a divorce, you look at everyone's assets. Well, a trust is not part of a marital asset. So again, that will work for my kids should they marry someone that's not their life partner. And, I don't have to worry about someone else getting their inheritance. So again, a trust is a really smart way to do estate planning, a very smart way to keep family members from having to make decisions with your family. Especially if you don't have a person that is really accountable and really invest and think like you think. So that's so important. So I'm going to pause here.
So when do you think is the best time to start a trust? When you're younger, or when you have a certain amount of assets? Or
okay. So So you really have to do estate planning, because when I meet with people, I can say, you really don't need a trust. Your kids are grown, you're married. Everything that you have has a beneficiary designation. So you spending $2,500 to do a trust is not really important. So sometimes I will opt for someone to just make sure we have registrations and beneficiaries good. So for example, if, one of the spouses, the home is just in their name, well, maybe let's change the deed to make it a joint property. So if something were to happen, they still own the property. You don't need that to be in a trust because it's just going to pass to the other person.
Gotcha.
I think the more, I think it just depends on the complexity of your estate and really to determine what should I have. Do I really need a trust? Do I really need, a will? And most people do need a will because most people have homes. Most people have things that, jewelry that they want to pass to a certain person, unless you just feel like you can trust your family to divvy up your estate the way you told them to. If you really want to be completely sure, you have to make sure that it's a legal document that dictates that.
Yeah. So are trusts taxable upon death?
Yeah. So okay, there's an estate tax. The exempt and it's based on your state. I know for Tennessee, the exemption is $5 million. So you're exempt from estate taxes. And that's a whole different CPA kind of conversation.
Yeah.
However, it depends on, so for example, if you have a retirement account and it's designated to your trust. So something happens to me, all of my retirement accounts go into my trust. At that point, because it's a retirement account, if they don't pull anything, my kids don't have a tax.
Gotcha.
Okay? Because it's still an entity of an IRA. It's now just in a trust.
The trust, yeah.
So until they, take out over the 5-year period that they've now changed the rule to, they're not paying taxes on that money.
Gotcha.
If I owe taxes,
I
have to pay that out of my estate, property taxes, things like that. But for our state, it's a $5 million estate exemption.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. So I know we're going to probably be wrapping up soon, but I want to just shift a little bit, talk about, because everybody is working hard out here trying to make their money and do their thing. What should people be doing to have their money work for them?
First of all, you need to meet with a financial advisor. You really do. I mean, I honestly, people don't know what they're doing when it comes to money. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just going to be
right.
I don't know. I mean, I go to a doctor because I don't know about your blood types and, science and what are you looking at? And just let me know if I'm normal.
Right.
Because that's the extent. And that's why I pay you. I pay you to tell me what's wrong or what I need to change in my whatever. Same thing with your money. So if you're not having a conversation with a financial advisor about your current state, and I tell people it's 5 steps to financial planning, which is figuring out, where am I today? What does your financial picture really look like? And then where do I want to get to? And then we as financial advisors, we determine if that's something you can realistically do. And then we come up with strategies to do that. And then, we partner for the rest of your life to make sure that you're on track because life happens. So I think what we should be doing right now is having those conversations about money to make sure that we are where we need to be, because everyone is different. You cannot depend on general information for your strategy of wealth. It has to be tailor-made for you. Everyone is different.
Can I interrupt right there? Because I think it's important to kind of interview your financial advisor.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if you can speak on that a little bit, because there are financial advisors who are okay or don't match your personality. So
yeah, that's a good point. It's kind of like, anyone that you want to work with. I interview clients. I'm at a point in my business where if I don't want to work with someone, I'm going to recommend them to go somewhere else, because there is a type of, bond that you want to have with your client. There's a level of trust that you want your clients to experience. And so it's important to make sure that you really feel comfortable, kind of like your doctor, with your financial advisor. Go to them, talk to them, ask about their credentials.
Yeah.
I always recommend that people go to the FINRA website. That's our governing body for financial advisors. And that is
Say that
where
again so people can hear that.
FINRA,
Okay.
FINRA.
Okay.
FINRA, you can go, and it's called Broker Check, BROKER check. And Broker Check.
Broker check.
Yeah, BROKER check. That's where you can pull up like my name and you can figure out everything about me. If she's had a complaint, if she's been sued over a financial client relationship. So I think that's important because that tells you, kind of like a credit report, it tells you about your financial advisor. So there are things that you can look up. And I tell people, why don't you look me up on Broker Check?
Yeah.
And get to know me better. But I like to meet people, and I like to, well, right now with the pandemic, we're unfortunately not seeing people in person, but we use Zoom and we use phone conversations. And I gauge people to see if it's someone that I feel like I could really help, and that we're good partners for each other, because it's both sides.
It is. And I
it's both sides.
I agree with that. So you was giving us a list. I kind of interrupted you.
A list
of how to make our money work for us. So you said a financial advisor.
Oh yeah, financial advisor. I think that's important in coming up with a tailor-made strategy for you. Don't panic during the pandemic. It's important that if you're invested and the market goes down, try not to panic. That's why you have financial advisors. Our portfolios are designed with you in mind, with your risk tolerance and things like that. And I think that's the benefit of having advisors. When March happened, I knew exactly who to call. I knew because I know my clients. I know who's going to be freaking out on me. You know what? It's going to be okay. I know who to say, hey, how much are you wanting to bring in? Because this is a great opportunity. And I think just having that relationship and just really being comfortable with sharing. And I think as a people, we don't like to tell about our money. It's kind of like I have to say, okay, so, and I hired a new person and recently, and she's like, oh, this person wants to come in. I'm like, well, how much money do they have?
Yeah.
Just say they have an old 401k. How much is it? Oh, I didn't ask, because we feel like we don't want to ask because that's something that we've never really discussed in the past.
Yeah.
And we got to be open, because we are like doctors and we're giving you prescriptions for your wealth. So if we don't really know your real full state, we can make bad investment recommendations for you. So it's important to be completely honest about where you are, how much you have, because we're here to really help you to get to that next level. And some people think it's a myth. Oh, I have to have so much. Oh, I have to have this. That's a myth. Like you need to have the conversation, because no matter what you have, you can still go to that next level.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been another great time for Stronger and Better. Toni, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us again and coming on the show and giving us a good grip on financial literacy and making sure that we are growing stronger and better. If somebody wanted to get in contact with you, how would that happen?
So you can definitely reach me at my office. And that number is 901-754 9947. And if anyone has any questions, we have a few more minutes.
Yeah, if we have questions, please for your questions in the chat here, and let us know that you're listening. And Toni is here once again to kind of give us a breakdown of what we should be doing in order to grow financially. Toni, let me ask you something about this trust piece. I got a question. Can a trust be formed as a nonprofit also, or as a non-taxable institution?
I don't think so. So, like, remember, a trust is just going to dictate how you are. So what you put in the trust would determine the tax consequences. Okay.
Okay.
Like if I create a trust and I put retirement assets in the trust, I know how those retirement assets will be taxed. If I put my home in the trust, I know that I have property taxes that will have to be paid through the trust. So the house is in the name of the trust. So there lies your taxes. So it just depends on kind of what you put in the trust is going to dictate how you are taxed.
That
So
makes sense.
now, like a trust, so for example, a brokerage account is in trust name. Well, that trust is going to have
Yep.
tax implications because if you sell something, you're going to get a tax, capital gains or capital loss. That's tax to the trust itself because it's in trust name. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. It makes sense. So it depends on what you put in the trust.
In the trust. And you have
it's
to rename things in the name of the trust. So, like if you put your home in trust, I mean, if you put a home in a trust, the home name, like my name, is not on the house. It will have to be in the name of the trust to be a trust asset.
Got you. Got you. And can you do that possibly through like a quick claim deed or?
So you do that through an estate attorney
Okay.
because they have to first create your trust for you.
Okay.
And then you go through a whole retitlement process to get the assets titled in the name of the trust. They do all of that for you.
That makes sense. We do have one question. It says from Paula, when should you turn in savings bonds?
So that's a good question. I don't think it's a set time when you need to turn in savings bonds. I think that's just like another level of kind of like savings that you have. So it's not really a real timetable because they are growing interest. You know, they're backed by the government. So you have that interest. It's not really going anywhere. So it just depends on when you want to trade them in, really. When you want to cash them in. So it's not a real timetable as to when you have to do that.
So I know a lot of people buy saving bonds for kids and all that kind of stuff. So do you still encourage people to do that? Or is there a better system in terms of for kids?
I think a better system for kids that's going to give you a bit more growth opportunity is through college savings plans, which are called 529 plans.
Okay.
And that's where we are investing, you know, your dollars and you're getting a lot more than the interest on a savings fund. So that's a better option, especially when you have young kids, to be in savings funds for 18 years when saving for college is not the best use of your savings. You can put it in a 529 college savings. It grows tax deferred and it's tax free when you pull it out for the use of college.
So
that's a better option.
Okay, so if my child got a scholarship,
Mm-hmm.
does those funds have to be used for college, or can they be used in another manner?
So they have to be used for college expenses, and that can include your books, your food, your apartment, your laptops. And another thing about 529 savings is that you can change beneficiary designations.
Okay.
So you have 3 kids. So the first one gets a scholarship. Well, change the beneficiary to the second one. Because they get a scholarship, okay, change it to the third one. If they get a scholarship and you do not need that money, you can keep it in the 529 for 5 years. But within 5 years, it has to be pulled out. And at that point, the gains are taxed. So what I recommend is my strategy would be if you are done going through beneficiaries and you have this money in a 529, take a fifth out every year so that you're not taxed all at one time. And you're only taxed on the gains, not what you put in.
Not what you put in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's good to know. Are there any other things that we should be doing in terms for our young people that's growing up? Other than
we should be talking to them, having conversations about money. There's a lot of literature out there. I'm actually going to be starting to host some classes for my young people through some different not-for-profits here. Because I think it's important. I mean, our young Black kids, we are, like I said, we didn't start at the same place. And making sure they catch up is really important. So making sure that they go to any type of financial workshops, having the conversations with them at home is important. And then helping them to save. My baby got, I think, $500 for her birthday. And the first thing she told me was like, Mommy, can I get Apple because they're going to split? And I'm like, yes.
Yes.
So you got to just train them up. Now, I have 2 kids. The one is like, well, I wouldn't be doing that. I'm buying some Lululemon shorts. So you just got to continue to pray and like talk to your kids and give them that wisdom to be good stewards of what God has blessed them with.
We do have another question from Isaiah. She says, how can I ensure the equity in my home goes to church upon death? No children to be considered with.
So you can do that through, so that's kind of tricky because you have to have an executor to actually sell the house. And then in your will, you can say anything that's left, I would like that to go to my church. So you can do that through a will. That's easily done. But again, you have to have an executor to actually sell the home. And then whatever proceeds are remaining in your will, you can dictate that to go to your church.
That's good. So once again, thank you, Toni. We're approaching our hour. I don't like to keep anybody past the hour, but, I love you so much. Thank you for this information. And this has been another great session for Stronger and Better in terms of finances. And of course, we're going to have you back to get a little deeper. We keep getting deeper and deeper.
Yes.
So let's keep getting deeper and deeper in terms of helping people. But I want to thank everybody for joining us again. Please remember to follow me on Facebook, YouTube, and some of the other channels. Make sure you subscribe to YouTube channel. So we're trying to grow our market. So please, thank you once again. Love you guys. And thank you for joining Stronger and Better. And make sure that you're sharing this. Thank you, Toni.
You're welcome. Bye.